The first debuff to have different effects got a huge glow up during Season 4 of Limbus Company, turning sinking teams on their heads. The addition of the Wuthering Heights butlers as well as more DH association identities made sinking more potent than ever before. And with the release of Wild Hunt Heathcliff, I believe no more sinking identities are going to show up for a while, meaning that there's no better time than now to talk about the state of sinking teams. Much like the other State of Team videos, today we're going to go over what I consider to be the best sinking team and its variations. I'll explain exactly why I picked each identity for the team, as well as highlight the egos that bring this team together. At the end of the video, sinking will be placed on my team tier list, so stick around until the end to see how strong this sad bunch of priests and mates can get. Starting off, I present to you the team. This is my rendition of the best sinking team, with all the support identities included. I believe that most of my picks for this team are pretty easy to understand, but let's go over each identity in order to see what they bring to the table. First of all, we have Spicebush Yi-Sang. For a long time he has been the poster boy of sinking, with his great amount of damage inflicted through his third skill. By using Blood-Steeped Sand against an enemy with a lot of sinking, Yi-Sang causes an effect called Sinking Deluge. This effect is pretty much the win condition of this team, as if you manage to inflict a large amount of both sinking potency and count, hitting an enemy with Deluge is going to deal hundreds if not thousands of damage, and is only achievable through Spicebush Yi-Sang. The damage it deals is equal to sinking count multiplied by sinking potency. When targeting a human enemy, the damage is first dealt to their sanity, and after reaching -45 SP, all the excess is then dealt as gloom damage to the enemy. When attacking abnormalities, all of the damage is gloom damage. Outside the insanity of that effect, Yi-Sang also has two more special properties. Whenever he uses his first or third skill, Yi-Sang gains Tremor count. This Tremor count can then be spent on his second skill, making it target 3 enemies instead of 1. Another way to spend his Tremor is by hoarding 10 count at once, which increases the damage of Sinking Deluge by another 30%, or 40 if your Spicebush Yi-Sang is at Uptime 4. Before Uptime 4, his first skill wastes 1 sinking count, and his second skill is pretty lackluster against enemies that fight you alone. But by uptying him to 4, you actually increase his power greatly, by giving him 1 more count on his first skill and letting him go up to 19 power on his second skill. You also give his evade sloth affinity, which makes it better for resonance and sinking count conservation. Our second unit is actually a 2-star identity, Wuthering Heights Butler Faust. She's only usable at Uptime 4, but when given that upgrade, Faust becomes an extremely powerful sinking machine. Notably, she's one of 2 identities with the ability to inflict Echoes of the Manor, which is an effect that allows you to inflict 1 more sinking count whenever you inflict either sinking potency or count with skills or coins at a 50% chance. Faust's passive ability makes her a potent clasher, as she can inflict up to 9 additional sinking in a turn by winning clashes. Her second and third skill actually get a lot of additional power at Uptime 4, which gives Faust the ability to consistently win clashes for even more sinking on the target. Faust's access to Echoes, great passive ability, as well as her above average power and great sinking infliction to the enemy, make her a strong and easy to get choice for any sinking team. Our next identity for the team is Diechi Honglu. You might have noticed that I jumped over Mersault, but we'll talk about him later. Honglu deals a lot of damage due to the effects of his passive ability, which gives him damage up whenever he discards a skill. This, on top of the additional power and damage of his skills 2 and 3, makes him a very consistent damage dealer on sinking teams. But Diechi Honglu is a lot more than just damage. His third skill inflicts a total of 4 sinking count with its 3 coins. This means that with Echoes of the Manor active, he can inflict up to 7 sinking count with Cyclical Knowledge. Of course, with how Echoes work, you're looking mostly at 5 or 6 count on this skill, but that still means going +2 or 3 in count, which helps a lot. His first skill behaves in a similar way. Whenever you use Expand Knowledge with a high amount of insight, you can use Echoes of the Manor to inflict sinking count on the target. Honglu's skill 1 is basically a Vikrik skill 3 in the right hands. and while it's not as good at inflicting count as his third skill, some count is better than no count. Next, we're going to skip over Heathcliff to talk about Mauler Ishmael. Once again, her first and third skills do well to inflict sinking count. The first skill does need echoes to inflict more count than it consumes, but it still never goes negative. Her second skill has the ability to use up some count to inflict 6 potency. Whenever you're gearing up for a deluge, this is a good trade to make. But the strongest ability in Ishmael's kit is her skill 3, Risky Judgment. This skill inflicts 5 sinking count and 6 potency. With 3 coins, that's plus 2 count in total. Risky Judgment can also dish out some crazy damage, with both a coin power and plus damage conditionals. But the most interesting part of her kit is her passive. Whenever Ishmael hits an enemy with Tremor, she inflicts plus 1 sinking count. Tremor count for this ability can be obtained mostly through her second skill. But you can also use egos such as Regret and Cavernous Wailing to help you out in activating this passive. When it's active, Ishmael becomes incredible at inflicting sinking count. This is highly useful to make sure the enemy stays at high count at all times. Another added bonus is that Ishmael doesn't gain much from her archetype 4, meaning that if you're low on resources, she won't be too expensive. Next up, we have another cornerstone of the team, in the Asia Association Rodion. And let's be real, in a sinking team you're not exactly fond of your skills 1 and 2, but her third skill inflicts a lot of count while still having 4 coins, which makes it a perfect contender for using Echoes of the Manor. Her defense skill also allows Rodion to come back to her skill 3 earlier, which makes her pretty good. She also gets a lot of shield HP whenever you discard anything, meaning she can safely spam her block without any consequences. But the real power of Rodion comes from her ego skills, which is why I can't talk about her for too long. The last member of the squad is Wuthering Heights Chief Butler Otis. If you remember the things I said about Faust, most of that also applies to Otis. She's the other unit with access to Echoes of the Manor, and her passive allows Otis to deal a lot of damage and clash well against enemies affected by sinking. Otis also gets a big glow up in the damage department when it up type 4, so I recommend upgrading her if you want to play this team to its maximum potential. However, Otis's main problem is the fact that she has a lot of coins. With more coins than Faust, she's likely to waste more sinking count. Granted, she does deal a lot of damage with all those coins, but the idea of the team is to feed Yi Sang, so that ability isn't really appreciated. Still, Echoes of the Manor are too good to pass up. Her defensive skill also inflicts sinking, so Otis is still a powerful sinking support and should be used by all good sinking teams. Now I want to go over some variations. Usually at this point I turn to the support bench, but there are many changes that can be made to this team which I would consider to be side grades, and as such I want to shed light on some of them before talking about the support squad. First of all, I want to touch on Dieche Mersault. To me, he's interchangeable with Honglu. While under the effects of Regret, Mersault can dish out some serious damage, even more than Honglu with the right setup. But even though his raw power is good, I think that there's one problem. Scorched Knowledge, Mersault's skill 3, inflicts up to 9 sinking on the enemy. How much of that amount is count and how much is potency is chosen randomly. This makes Scorched Knowledge very inconsistent, as you can both get 8 or 9 count and be really happy, and get 8 or 9 potency and be really disappointed. Compared to Honglu, this is a gamble that I'm not willing to take. Wild Hunt Heathcliff is another character you might have expected to see on this team. But he has his own issues. While Requiem inflicts a lot of sinking count, his other 2 skills waste it really quickly. And without a normal defensive skill to skip those attacks, you're forced to use up count for his sake. When running a Spice Bush Yi Sang in your team, using Wild Hunt isn't that great of an idea. Instead, you can opt to use him in place of Yi Sang as your main damage dealer. Sure, you lose access to one of the strongest attacks in the game, but you gain access to a very strong conventional damage dealer identity. The damage he deals with his skills far outshines Yi Sang outside of Sinking Deluge, and with how easy it is to stack Coffin in human fights, he becomes the definite better option when facing a human encounter. Also, here's the actual strongest team. Yeah, he's incredible when playing solo, and you know, by definition, This is a syncing team. I mean, all of the combat identities inflict syncing, right? So this should also count. Also, you might be wondering where is Edgar Family Gregor, and to that, I have to say that he's another contender for the damage dealing spot. But he loses to Yi-Sang in boss fights and loses to Wild Hunt in human fights. His support passive is also terrible, so I decided to hide him far away from anyone's eyes. Now back to the support bench. Dawn is a happy queen, so she has no syncing identities, which is why we're left with Warp Corp. Her skill can be procced pretty easily and helps out in clashes a lot. Next we have Yurodivi Roshu. Her passive is targeted specifically at Yi-Sang, as it allows him to get more tremor. Outside of this identity, all other supportive Roshus have pretty much no effect, so if you're not running Yi-Sang, her slot really doesn't matter. If you're running Honglu, Geisha Mersault can help both Honglu and Rodya by giving them more shields. If you're running Mersault, Honglu should be set to base form for a lot of SP recovery. You can also try to make Gambit work by using a lot of Yi-Sang's and Mersault's skill 1s. When using Yi-Sang, his skill's Wild Hunt identity can help out with syncing infliction against abnormalities. Sinclair is set to Los Mariachis, as the entire gimmick of syncing is lowering the enemy's SP. Gregor should be running his base form, unless you're using Mersault, in which case you can go for G-Corp for more healing. Now I want to highlight some egos. The most important one of all is Rhymeshank. If you get this ego to threat spin 4, its corrosion variant can inflict a whopping 10 syncing with 8 count. This is an incredible amount of syncing that propels your team far ahead in reaching the goal of a high damage deluge. The biggest problem with Rhymeshank is that it requires envy resources. This team doesn't generate many of those, so you can try to modify it to include more. If you want to make use of Corrosion Rhymeshank, you might have to use someone like Archetype Mersault to sit and block all day for envy resources. While this may seem counterproductive, if you're playing solely to feed Yi-Sang, it's a good investment. As I mentioned before, Regret and Cavernous Wailing can be used to help Ishmael use her passive. Cavernous Wailing has a more forgiving cost, while Regret has a stronger passive effect. Yi-Sang also has access to Bygone Days, which is a Gloom ego that requires Gloom and Sloth resources and inflicts a good amount of syncing on use. Land of Illusion can be used to inflict a bit of syncing at a low resource cost and virtually no sanity cost. Sunshava Yi-Sang can be used to give the team a huge physical power-up at a reasonable cost. Sunshava Otis can be used to quickly win a clash with an added bonus of 4 syncing. Before we move on to the tier list, I want to tell you where to use syncing teams. Playing for Yi-Sang is fun but takes a lot of time. If you're willing to do it, you should use him on bosses with a lot of HP. If you're using Heathcliff instead, you can use this team in a variety of encounters, but don't expect huge amounts of damage. In general, syncing can be used to cripple human bosses like Nelly, and if you create a hybrid team of syncing users with a couple different damage dealers, you can easily beat any human boss currently in the game. Now, the tier list placement. It pains me to do this, but syncing is going into the B tier. Compared to other teams, this one deals a lot less damage and reaches less power. Spicebush Yi-Sang is largely carried by Mirror Dungeon gifts, while Wild Hunt Heathcliff is better used on his own than in this team. Even if you build a perfect team for syncing count upkeep, reaching that coveted Yi-Sang nuke will take too long, and in human encounters you straight up can't use the bonuses most of the time. Still, the identities themselves aren't that bad, and can work especially well against blunt weak enemies. And that's it for the syncing team, an archetype with a lot of potential, but not a lot of results. In the future I see this team becoming stronger and more viable once a good syncing inflictor shows up. For now, you're mostly relying on blunt damage to carry you through fights. If you want me to cover your favorite team next, leave a comment telling me which team you'd like to see. Thank you so much for watching till the end of the video, and if you liked it, leave a like and subscribe to the channel to join the Was Here Before 1K club. This was Ultranum, and I hope to see you soon. Goodbye!